Have you ever noticed how some women walk away from a man's life and suddenly he's obsessed, calling, lurking, wondering, while others disappear and barely leave a dent? It's not about looks, drama, or chasing. It's about energy. And today we're going to unpack the real reason why some women leave a mark so deep. Men feel their absence louder than their presence. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Men don't miss the loudest woman. They miss the one who mastered her silence. The one who knew how to walk with grace, not revenge. The woman who wasn't performing for attention, but radiated self-worth so strongly. Her presence couldn't be replaced. In this video, we're diving into the magnetic habits that make men emotionally addicted long after you're gone. These aren't gimmicks. These are mindset shifts, daily rituals, and feminine energy upgrades that change how the world sees you, and more importantly, how you see yourself. This isn't about getting a man back, it's about becoming the woman he regrets losing. The kind of woman who doesn't beg, doesn't chase, and definitely doesn't lose sleep over mixed signals. So if you've ever been ghosted, undervalued, or left wondering what you did wrong, it's time to change the game. Because starting right now, you'll learn how to create an emotional echo that stays with him long after your silence speaks louder than words. Let's begin. Most women underestimate the power of their absence. They assume silence means defeat, that walking away means you won. But in reality, when used with intention and emotional discipline, absence becomes your most powerful presence. Here's what you need to know. Men don't miss what's always available. They miss what's felt, not seen. And emotionally, the male brain is wired to associate value with scarcity. Think about it. The things we desire the most often feel just out of reach. That's the pull. That's the tension. And that's exactly what you create when you stop over-giving, over-explaining, and over-showing up. Psychologically, when you remove your energy, your warmth, your laughter, your attention, it creates a gap, a space, a silence that starts to echo. And in that silence, a man begins to reflect, not just on what he had, but on what he lost. Your absence forces his mind to confront your value without the distraction of your presence. But here's the key. This only works when your absence is rooted in self-worth, not manipulation. If you're disappearing just to get a reaction, that energy will eventually betray you. But if your silence is powered by peace, boundaries, and emotional clarity, he feels it deeply, because a woman who doesn't chase, doesn't explain, and doesn't fold activates a very specific fear in men, the fear of losing something irreplaceable. And it's not about punishing him. It's about preserving you. Think about this. When you're always texting, calling, checking in, or holding on, you're giving him emotional certainty. He knows you're there. But when you reclaim your energy, he's left with emotional uncertainty, and that's what activates his subconscious mind. That's what makes him rethink. That's what makes him miss you. Absence creates contrast. It reminds him of the light you brought into his life, the peace you offered, the way he felt around you. And the moment he realizes that feeling isn't easily replaced, that's when he begins to crave it. But remember, true power isn't in the act of going silent. It's in who you become during that silence. You're not waiting. You're not watching your phone. You're leveling up, healing, glowing, expanding. And that shift in energy is magnetic. So the next time you feel the urge to reach out, chase clarity, or explain your worth, pause. Let the psychology of absence do its quiet work. Let the silence speak for you. Because when you pull back, not out of fear, but from a place of knowing your value, the effect is undeniable. He won't just remember you, he'll feel you, long after you've gone. There's a quiet power in the way high-value women move. They don't chase, they don't explain, and they certainly don't beg to be seen. Instead, they master habits so magnetic, men feel pulled toward them without fully understanding why. These women radiate self-worth, and their presence lingers in a man's mind long after they've gone silent. That's not an accident. It's a pattern, a mindset, a way of showing up in the world that raises their value without ever needing to say a word. The most magnetic women understand the value of emotional self-control. They don't react impulsively, no matter how tempting it is to fire off a text or call when they feel ignored. Instead, they pause, reflect, and move with emotional intelligence. That silence, that pause, it speaks volumes. Men notice when a woman doesn't hand over her emotional power so easily. She becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability builds interest. Another deeply magnetic habit is detachment from the outcome. A high-value woman doesn't obsess over whether he likes her or if he'll commit. Her focus is on herself, her peace, her goals, her glow-up. This energy creates a sense of ease and confidence. She's not performing, she's simply living. And when a man senses she doesn't need his attention to feel validated, it disarms him. It makes him respect her more. The absence of pressure becomes attractive. She also knows how to set silent boundaries. Not every message gets a reply. Not every question deserves her energy. If something feels off, she doesn't confront aggressively. She simply pulls back. That quiet withdrawal is often more impactful than any loud reaction. Men recognize when they've crossed a line, not because she told them, but because she stopped showing up. She makes herself the center of her own world. Her schedule is full, her energy is focused, and her time is valuable. She doesn't abandon her life to orbit around a man. Instead, she invites him into a space that's already vibrant, already fulfilled. That kind of energy creates curiosity and desire. He doesn't feel responsible for her happiness, which allows him to want to contribute to it, rather than feel pressured by it. And perhaps most importantly, her love flows from abundance, not emptiness. She's not loving to earn approval or to fill a void. She loves because it's who she is, not because she's afraid of losing someone. And if she needs to walk away, she does so with grace, not guilt. That kind of self-contained, radiant energy becomes unforgettable. Even in her absence, he feels her. Even in silence, she leaves an imprint. When you begin to embody these magnetic habits, you stop chasing your worth and start living it. That shift is powerful. It's feminine. And it's exactly what makes men realize you weren't just another woman. You were the one that got away. Emotional detachment is one of the most misunderstood but most powerful tools a woman can master, not as a form of punishment, but as a way to protect her peace and magnify her presence. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're cold or closed off. It means you've stopped tying your self-worth to someone else's behavior. And in today's dating world, that shift changes everything. So many women get stuck in a cycle of overgiving, overthinking, and overreacting. Why hasn't he texted back? Why did his energy change? Why does it feel like you're always the one holding the connection together? These questions pull you deeper into anxiety, not clarity, because the more emotionally attached you are to the outcome, the more control you give away. That desperation becomes energetic, even if you're silent. He feels it. And the truth is, nothing repels a man faster than energy that's rooted in fear or neediness. But when you detach, not to manipulate, but to liberate, you change the entire dynamic. You're no longer waiting for his validation. You're observing instead of absorbing. You're choosing presence over obsession. And from that space, your power returns. You no longer need to prove your worth, because you know your worth. You're not chasing closure, attention, or answers. You're simply allowing what's meant for you to flow and letting go of what isn't. Men respond very differently to a woman who is emotionally secure. She becomes a mystery, a breath of fresh air. She doesn't panic when he pulls away, because she understands that space isn't always a threat. Sometimes it's a test. And instead of begging for reassurance, she gives it to herself. That level of self-trust is rare, and it's magnetic. Emotional detachment also gives you the clarity to see people for who they really are, not who you hope they'll become. You stop romanticizing potential and start observing patterns. You no longer tolerate inconsistency, because you're not emotionally invested in changing someone. You're invested in protecting your energy. That detachment creates standards, and those standards raise your value in his eyes, whether he admits it or not. This mindset also helps you avoid burnout and emotional exhaustion. When you're overly attached, you pour from an empty cup. You start to compromise your own well-being just to keep someone interested. But when you're detached, you stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. You start choosing yourself, not out of bitterness, but out of deep self-love. And here's the secret most don't understand. When a man feels your emotional detachment, he doesn't feel discarded. He feels challenged. He wonders why you're not reacting like everyone else. He starts to miss the woman who didn't make him the center of her world. And that is often the very moment he begins to chase. Emotional detachment isn't distance, it's discipline. And once you master it, you'll never beg for bare minimum again. Desire isn't created by words. It's not built on how much you do for someone, how often you show up, or how many times you try to prove your love. True desire is sparked by energy, the kind of energy that lingers when you walk into a room, and more powerfully when you walk away. If you want to shift how men respond to you, you don't need to become someone else. You simply need to shift your energy. It starts with your presence. Masculine energy is drawn to feminine energy that is soft, centered, and grounded. But here's where many women go wrong. They confuse softness with passivity. Softness isn't weakness. It's confidence without control. It's being deeply rooted in your worth, while allowing the man to lead, initiate, and pursue. That relaxed energy makes a man lean in. When you're not forcing, fixing, or chasing, you become the invitation instead of the effort. And that shift, it's powerful. Your energy also changes when you stop seeking validation. When you walk into any space with the silent belief that I belong here, you shift the atmosphere. You're no longer performing. You're not looking for permission to take up space. You just do. Men sense that. Confidence is quiet, and when it's paired with self-respect, it becomes magnetic. You don't need to over-explain or overshare to prove your value. Your stillness, your poise, your grace says it all. Another important energy shift is choosing curiosity over control. Most women, especially when they're anxious, try to manage the outcome. They ask too many questions, try to define the relationship too soon, or overanalyze every move. But when you shift into curiosity, you're simply observing. You're letting him show you who he is without trying to shape him into who you want. That ease relaxes the masculine. He doesn't feel judged or boxed in, and that's when he starts to naturally move toward you. Desire also grows in the space you leave behind. When you're always available, always texting, always filling the silence, there's no mystery. But when you take your time, protect your peace, and stay selective with your energy, you create room for him to wander. Wonder is what pulls him in. Men don't crave constant access. They crave the feeling of pursuit. And the more they feel like they're choosing you, not being pressured by you, the stronger that desire becomes. Finally, one of the most underrated energy shifts is staying in your feminine even when you're triggered. Instead of reacting, you pause. Instead of chasing, you lean back. You trust your energy to speak louder than your words. And it does. You become the woman who doesn't beg for effort, because your vibe makes it clear. You are the reward. Desire isn't created through strategy. It's created through energy. And once you shift yours, you won't have to convince anyone to want you. They'll feel it the moment you walk in, and miss it the second you're gone. The moment you stop reaching out is the moment everything shifts. Not just for you, but for him too. At first, it might feel like silence, emptiness, a void that tempts you to fill it with one more message, one more check-in, one more just wanted to say hi. But if you resist that urge, if you stay in your power, you'll trigger something deeper inside him than you ever could with words. Reflection. When a woman pulls back, especially one he's grown used to, it disrupts his sense of emotional certainty. He's no longer receiving your energy on demand. No more good morning texts. No more validating reactions. No more emotional labor from your side. And whether he admits it or not, it catches him off guard. Because deep down, most men are conditioned to believe that a woman will wait, hold space, or try harder, even when he pulls away. So when you don't, that silence is loud. At first, he might assume you're just giving space. But when a few days go by, and the pattern doesn't return, the questions begin. Is she upset? Is she done? Did she move on? That emotional tension builds quietly. And in that space, something powerful happens. He starts to feel your absence. Not just physically, but emotionally. He starts to realize how much of the connection was held together by you. The male mind often processes emotions more slowly, especially when it comes to relationships. While women usually feel the loss first, men tend to feel it later and hard. So when you stop reaching out, you force him to sit with that absence. There's no distraction, no ego boost, no safety net, just the quiet realization that your energy is no longer his to access. This is also where the contrast sets in. He starts to remember how you made him feel, the comfort, the support, the way your words lifted him, or your presence calmed him. Those things seemed subtle before, maybe even taken for granted. But now that they're gone, if he truly valued you, even if he didn't know how to show it. This is where desire, regret, and reflection start to swirl. He might reach out just to check in, but what he's really doing is testing the waters, trying to feel if the old dynamic still exists. But when you remain calm, grounded, and unattached, when you don't rush to fill the space again, it shifts the power. If he didn't value you, he may never say a word, but even then, your silence will still speak. It will still land, because at some point, every man remembers the woman who stopped chasing, stopped explaining, and started choosing herself. So when you stop reaching out, don't panic. Don't break your silence for a breadcrumb. Stay still. Let him feel the cost of losing your access. Because sometimes, silence says everything you couldn't, and everything he never expected to hear. Staying on a man's mind without contact isn't about tricks, mind games, or manipulation. It's about becoming a woman whose energy is unforgettable. So much so that even in your silence, you're still present in his thoughts. The truth is, when you pull away with grace, when you choose stillness over chasing, you create space. And in that space, you become memorable. The key is to understand that emotional connection doesn't always require physical presence. Energy doesn't vanish when you stop texting. It lingers. If you've ever walked away from someone and they reached out weeks or even months later, seemingly out of nowhere, you already know how true this is. Men remember women who leave an emotional imprint, not the ones who constantly seek reassurance. So when you go quiet, it's not the silence that gets to him. It's the shift in energy. It's the feeling that something valuable slipped through his fingers. What keeps you on his mind is the way you carried yourself, the way you made him feel when he was around you, and the way you carried your absence when he wasn't. It's the sudden realization that you no longer need his attention to feel whole. That confidence, that ease, that lightness in your silence. It's powerful. It makes him question everything. Not because you're trying to get in his head, but because you've taken yourself out of his world in a way that commands respect. Another reason you stay on his mind is because you don't break character. You don't randomly check in or post things online just to get a reaction. You're not sending signals out of desperation. You're staying centered, focused, evolving. When a man sees you remain calm, emotionally grounded, and radiant even in distance, it messes with his expectations. Most women react. You don't. That difference alone keeps you unforgettable. Men are naturally wired to pursue what they feel they could lose, not what's begging to be seen. When you stop giving him emotional access, and yet remain in your feminine energy, soft, magnetic, aligned, he starts to feel that contrast. The warmth that once felt so close is suddenly out of reach, and that dissonance draws his attention back to you, over and over. Even if he doesn't reach out right away, you can be sure he's thinking, he's watching, wondering, and often, he won't even understand why. Because energy like yours doesn't just disappear, it echoes, in his quiet moments, in the spaces you used to fill. In the absence of your light, he begins to feel the darkness of your withdrawal. So don't second guess your silence. Don't rush to remind him of your worth. If your energy was real, if your presence was powerful, and if your love was genuine, then trust this, he'll remember. Because the woman who learns how to be unforgettable without saying a word is the woman he never truly gets over. Sometimes the most powerful proof isn't theory, it's testimony. And these are the stories of real women who stopped chasing, started embodying their worth, and completely flipped the script on men who once took them for granted. Not with revenge, not with games, but by mastering their energy, detaching from the outcome, and walking away when it was no longer aligned. One woman shared that after being in a situationship for nearly a year, she finally stopped checking for his texts. No goodbye, no angry exit, no dramatic closure. She just decided one morning that her peace mattered more than his confusion. At first he said nothing. A week passed, then two. But by week 3, the silence hit him hard. He messaged her with a long paragraph about how he'd been thinking, how he missed her energy, and how he didn't realize what he had. But she was different now. Her silence wasn't temporary, it was transformation. She didn't respond, that was her closure. Another woman spent months being breadcrumbed by a man who liked to keep her close but never fully claimed her. Every time she pulled back, he would drop just enough attention to pull her back in. But eventually she broke the pattern. She didn't announce her departure. She just stopped participating in her own mistreatment. She muted his number, stopped viewing his stories, and stopped giving emotional access to someone who didn't earn it. Weeks later, he showed up. Flowers, apologies, promises. But by then she wasn't bitter. She just wasn't available. The version of her who had tolerated the bare minimum no longer existed. One story that stands out came from a woman who had been ghosted after 6 intense months of dating. No explanation, no warning, just silence. And instead of spiraling, she decided to level up. She took a solo trip, joined a local art class, worked on her body, mind and glow. She poured into herself, not to make him jealous, but to finally give herself the love she had so freely given to others. Months later, out of nowhere, he messaged her saying he kept thinking about her, and how no one else made him feel that way. She didn't reply, not because she hated him, but because she had healed beyond the version of herself that needed his closure. These women didn't get results by chance. They got them by reclaiming their energy, by refusing to beg, by staying grounded when everything in them wanted to chase. And in that shift, they stopped being an option and became a loss he couldn't shake. The script flips the moment you stop auditioning for a role you already deserve. These stories are proof. The woman who chooses herself doesn't just walk away, she rises, and when she does, the very energy that was once dismissed becomes the one he can't forget. If there's one truth that ties everything together, it's this. Magnetic energy isn't something you perform, it's something you embody. It's who you become when you stop chasing, stop shrinking, and start standing in your worth every single day. And the best part, you don't need anyone else to activate it for you. You already hold that power. It's just about remembering how to use it. So here's how you do it. Every morning, before the world pulls at your attention, check in with you. How are you feeling? What do you need today? Magnetic women don't wait to be chosen. They choose themselves first. That energy sets the tone. When you prioritize peace over panic,